Hello there, stranger on the internet. Welcome to the Bibliophile, where we talk books and try not to look dead inside. These eyes don't help the matter. I have 7 stories to share with you during my January wrap-up. January felt like a month where I accomplished a lot of reading. And in a sense, I have, but it's all an illusion. I just read a ton of short fiction, and I'm not mad one bit. First up is Knee Deep, Book 1. 200 years in the future, refugees from an environmental cataclysm fled underground. Now deemed superfolk, these individuals survived by navigating a twisted maze of tunnels and canals meant to be a utopian city that was never completed. A mining company named Perch wants to overtake the underground frontier and has no qualms eliminating the superfolk that get in their way. Caught in the middle is a young girl named Cricket. She's desperately searching for her parents who once fled below Earth's surface and were part of a grand resistance. I was honestly nervous about this one because of its low rating on Goodreads, but was surprised by how much I enjoyed it. I would say I'm easy to please. Knee Deep is a fun dystopian action-adventure narrative, and as you may have heard me say on this platform before, I'm a sucker for post-apocalyptic stories. What the world looks like after the human race falls never ceases to hold my attention. A little morbid, sure, but the macabre never bothered me anyway. That was cringy even for me. Instant regrets. It's too late to take it back now. Because proper agriculture is no longer viable, this book gave me ever so slight Soylent Green vibes with how the food is made. It's not nearly as horrific as the movie Solution, but let me have the comparison, okay? All the apocalyptic society trademarks are here, so the originality of the story may feel lacking, as there often is in a dystopian tale. A corrupt hierarchy or power is in place, and so many people are left abused and taken advantage of by it. As this nefarious narrative slowly unravels, the hidden agendas and schemes to deceive the public are exposed, and I couldn't help but feel my skin itching at the level of dishonesty taking place. What sets this story apart boils down to the cast of characters. They're incredibly inventive. For starters, there are human-animal hybrids like a man with the head and legs of a duck and the body of a person, but there are also humanoid animals like pigs that can talk. There's even a Frankenstein's monster situation going on. This conglomeration of beings existing in the same world didn't make the most sense to me. No sense, really. But I was here for it. As for the main character, Cricket, it was great discovering alongside her the sewer folk and strange underground world they inhabited. She's definitely a fish out of water, yet she's eager to move forward and reach her goal. By the end, the reader's left with a lot of questions, but I think this is just the beginning of an epic tale. Hopefully we'll see the many threads the author wove and see them come together in a larger picture. Next is Gallant, a buddy read of mine with my sister Fallon. Olivia Pryor has grown up at Maryland School for Girls, and all she has of her past is her mother's journal. When she's suddenly invited to come home to Gallant, the residents are shocked to see her. Olivia comes to find that Gallant is hiding secrets. When she crosses a ruined wall at just the right moment, the protagonist finds herself in a place that is Gallant, but not at the same time. The manor is crumbling and a mysterious figure rules over all. This version of Gallant has unraveled generations of her family and is where her father may have come from. Will Olivia take her place as a Pryor, protecting our world against the master of the house, or will she take her place beside him? My first impression of Gallant is that it gives off an atmosphere subtly similar to Crimson Peak. A manor past its prime is home to both the living and the dead in the form of decaying ghouls. The setting was fairy tale-esque, and the dark, rotting aesthetic was a large part of the book's appeal for me. What can I say? I love the dank and the damn. There were really fascinating ideas explored, one of which was what it's like to live in a world where people don't listen to you. Olivia is nonverbal, and practically no one around her knows sign language, leaving her easily dismissible. And even if someone does know this form of communication, they can simply turn away from her and act as if she isn't speaking at all. Olivia navigating ways to make her presence and emotions known in a world that hardly cares to give her notice was something I haven't come across often in literature. It was a twofold exploration. Olivia finding a way to be heard, and the emotional journey she goes through when people purposely or ignorantly silence her. I also enjoyed the way Schwab goes about investigating the meaning of home. We may have a place to stay, but does a roof over our heads make a building our home? What other conditions do we personally need met? Does a house's history, potential future, or its current inhabitants mean anything to us? And maybe most importantly, how much are we willing to sacrifice to stake a claim to one? I did really enjoy this read, but I think I was expecting a little more from Gallant considering how hyped V.E. Schwab is. Something kept me from fully falling in love with the book, and I think it might have been the slower pacing. The ending especially was frustrating to me. I didn't agree with the conclusion of a certain character's arc, but I understand and respect why they took the direction they did. I just like myself a hearty, happy ending. The real world depresses me enough. Next is Betwixt, a horror manga anthology that collects 6 stories, 3 of which were written and illustrated by Japanese creatives and the other 3 by American creatives. This international showcase reveals the universal fear of the space between the known and the unknown. The Japanese stories are traditionally formatted right to left, while the English ones are left to right, and the two formats meet in the middle, establishing its own in-between. Very clever! There are stories about ghosts, demons, doppelgangers, and more, and I have to say that I think this betwixt idea is highly original, while the result is a tad lackluster. The individual concepts I really liked, but not necessarily most of their deliveries. Honestly, I should have read all 6 stories in the dark, like I did the one called Shadow. The ending jarred me from my sleepiness and genuinely spooked me, instantly making it one of the top 2 stories from the collection. A girl befriends a cat, bringing it into her home only to be told a dark presence is now looming in her abode. Is the cat the one to blame, or is it something else? My other favorite from the anthology is Never Left. A young man who's been missing suddenly returns in the dead of winter with a warning about something unsettling beneath the ice at his old fishing hole. I would read an entire series about these characters if the author ever chose to make long-form content from this story. It's that good. This little number here is Octopi My Heart. Darren is a fisherman in his small hometown off Nova Scotia. His heart is as empty as the waters in winter until he meets Lilo, a beautiful creature of the ocean depths that Darren never believed could be real. Their courtship may be a fairy tale, but the gentle curl of a tentacle or wet kiss in magically warm waters has him dreaming of summer and a storybook ending. This is one of Christian's cast-offs from last year, and I'm glad to say that her trash has become my treasure. Octopi My Heart features a mythological creature from Celtic and Norse mythology, but Lilo's design reminded me a lot of Ursula from The Little Mermaid. Admittedly, this was my first experience with tentacle play, and it was something. My eyes have been seared with images that have changed me as a person, and I will never be the same again. Also, the cave scene can live rent-free in my brain as long as it likes. For a novella, I thought the romance was done so well. The two were sweet, soft, and sexy. The yumminess came from how tender the love interests were with one another, and I couldn't get enough. I was also taken by the couple's predicament. Lilo originally doesn't speak English, but he's highly intelligent and begins to learn quickly. Throughout this process, we get to see the couple share stories about their culture and personal backgrounds. These earnest attempts to learn more about one another and grow emotionally intimate deepen the relationship's believability. As a reader, I appreciated seeing the two navigate the multitude of barriers that tried to keep them apart. Darren and Lilo both make sincere attempts to become part of each other's world, and it melted my heart. My one complaint is that there's the typical miscommunication trope that's used, but it's done in a fresh way because Lilo doesn't have the vocabulary to explain himself. Personally, the mix-up still felt unnecessary and tired even because I've seen it done so many times in romance, but I'm ecstatic the two got their happily ever after. They deserve it, and I'm not mad I spent some time reading this romantic number. Next is Rumple Buttercup, a story of bananas, belonging, and being yourself, which is just as strange and heartwarming as it sounds. Rumple Buttercup has 5 crooked teeth, 3 strands of hair, green skin, and his left foot slightly larger than his right. He is weird. Join him and Candy Cane Carl, his imaginary friend made of trash, naturally, as they learn the joy of individuality as well as the magic of belonging. I love a quirky piece of literature, especially one geared toward uplifting young people, and Rumple Buttercup is that in a nutshell. The moral of the story is that everyone is weird. If we're not weird because of our appearance, then we're weird for some other reason like our personality, and that's okay. In fact, our weirdness makes us great, so why not embrace our strangeness and welcome other people's oddness as well? In a world that frequently targets and ostracizes people for being other, this was a spectacular, encouraging read. It's such a shame that so many individuals are made to feel lonely and separate because of facets of themselves intrinsic to who they are. I like to think Rumple Buttercup is a love letter to my fellow outcasts and weirdos of the world looking for acceptance and visibility. It's a celebration of acceptance, both of yourself and other people. I just couldn't help thinking though, and this is a testament to how jaded I am, that if someone like Rumple was ever discovered, they would most likely be chased after by men with guns, either for a trophy or out of pure spite, and then those men would closely be followed by government scientists. You see where I'm going with this? In fact, the government would have his butt so quick that the 3 hairs on his head would fall off. This book is a lovely concept though. Beautiful, truly. I just hope I see the day when the book's contents are actually a reality. But at this pace, the world will burn before the radical empathy needed for everyone to accept Rumple is unearthed. Speaking of terrible human beings, let's discuss And All That Could Have Been. A serial unaliver known as the Newlywed Killer is stalking recently married couples. After disappearing for 5 years, he's back and cornered his next victims at an isolated lake house. This is essentially exploitation horror with an SA revenge plot. It's super niche, so know that if you want to read this book, it covers extremely difficult subject matter that might be triggering or just generally upsetting to most readers. Reader discretion is advised. Christian kindly bought this for me for my birthday off my Amazon wishlist, so I want to take a quick minute to thank you, my dear sister, for indulging this horror whore's heart. Love you. What drew me to this novella was its cover. I fell in love with this illustration and told myself I'd read whatever story was cooked up behind it, and indeed I did. I found In All That Could Have Been to be a very mixed bag, but it intrigued me enough to go out and buy more by Jonathan Tripp, so mission accomplished. Essentially, I want this book to find its right audience, so I want to ensure readers know what to expect and can decide if this is up their alley. Let's start with the writing. I would describe it as rudimentary, and I'm not saying that as a dig to the author. I really didn't mind it. I thought it was very stylistic, and basic is not synonymous with bad. Just don't expect complex, flowery prose. The writer plainly sets the story forth and moves the plot along. Speaking of the plot, that was the story's biggest draw for me. I thought the author was clever in his setup and reveals, and that easily kept the pages turning. I went on a journey I wasn't expecting, and as a horror fan, I appreciated that. So many tropes lead to formulaic plots, but this novella offered a fresh take on a deadly killer's journey to add more notches to his belt. I also liked how, as you gained new understanding of the character situations, the author would take you back in time to what was happening to another character up until that point. Consequently, when information was divulged, the revelations were that much sweeter and deadlier. I was completely focused on the story and enthusiastic to see how it would end until the last 30 pages or so. There's something about a seemingly indestructible killer that wears me down. After the third time someone's presumed dead but it's revealed to be another fake out, I mentally recoil. The horror genre loves an unkillable monster, human or not, and this book tapped into that adoration. Hey, I love a Halloween or Friday the 13th movie as much as the next girl, but I'm going to need a sequel to bring the antagonist back, not a sequel within a sequel within a sequel. But I'll acknowledge that that's my bias. Regrettably, books that include the creative choice of an undefeatable adversary that seems like they should be down for the count but never are, fail to bring me the same level as entertainment as a high-stake, one miscalculated move and you're out circumstance. But again, that's just my personal preference. That element to this novella was my biggest hang-up, but the rest, I ate up. Last but not least is The River's Edge, a romantic suspense tale that is part of Christian's Castaways, aka books she's unhauled and I confiscated like the trash can I am. This novella follows two characters. Gino awakens on a riverbank. His gun, wallet, and cell phone are long gone, though he's left with a splitting headache. Soon he meets a damaged man named Shane who recently discovered his party friends aren't really friends at all. One man is blunt weapon, while the other has never quite measured up, neither with any good prospects for a bright future. When their paths collide on a nondescript river, they embark on an extraordinary journey of redemption and self-discovery. Together, they confront the unknown and forge an unbreakable bond that defies the odds. This had good writing, but I never fell for the story. A large part of that comes from the setting, I think. Christian completely spoiled me about what was going on with the river before I even picked this book up, which, 1, rude, and 2, that particular backdrop has never sat well with me. Ultimately, the author desired to create a sense of unease similar to that of a horror movie soundtrack, and mission wholly accomplished. That's exactly what I would like in this book too. It reminded me so much of Let Us Pray and Disquiet, two films that filled me with discomfort, anxiety, and a strong sense of dread. The apprehension was so real, and I never like feeling that way for an extended period of time. It hurts my existential soul. But I didn't want to give this book away without at least trying it. Unfortunately though, I think this is one that will truly be unhauled from the house. Not because it's a bad book by any means, but because it gives me anxiety! That brings us to the end of my wrap up. What books have you been loving lately? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next video.